Somewhere in Mesopotamia, 4,000 years ago, a farmer walks into a temple carrying nothing in his hands. He owes a debt. 12 months of barley, promised to a man he barely knows, for grain he already ate at a wedding 6 years earlier. The priest behind the counter doesn't reach for a scale. He doesn't reach for coins and he doesn't reach for cattle. He reaches for a piece of wet clay and he writes down a number. That number is money. Not silver, not gold, just a number, written down, backed by nothing but a shared memory of who owes what to who. And it existed almost 2,000 years before a single coin was ever struck. This is the real story of how ancient humans invented money, and it starts by breaking almost everything you were taught about it in school. You've probably heard the story before. Before money, there was barter. A farmer trades a chicken for a pair of sandals. A fisherman trades 3 fish for a sack of wheat. It's clean, it's logical, and economists have been repeating some version of it since Adam Smith wrote it down in 1776. There's just one problem. When anthropologists actually went looking for a society that ran on pure barter, no money, no credit, just direct trade between strangers, they couldn't find one. Not one. Not anywhere on Earth in any era anyone has ever actually documented. Anthropologist Caroline Humphrey put it bluntly in her own research on the subject. No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. Every case Adam Smith's story depends on turns out to be something else entirely once you actually look closely. So if it wasn't barter, what was it? The earliest thing that behaved like money wasn't a coin or a shell or even a piece of metal. It was livestock, cattle, sheep, goats. For thousands of years across dozens of unconnected cultures, a person's wealth was quite literally counted in animals. The link runs so deep it's fossilized directly into modern language. The Latin word for money, pecunia, comes directly from pecus, meaning cattle. It's the same root that gives us the modern word pecuniary, but livestock came with an obvious problem. You can't hand someone 1/17 of a cow to buy a loaf of bread. It doesn't divide, it doesn't travel well, and it definitely doesn't sit still in your pocket. So the next shift happened somewhere that could actually solve that problem, a place with strict measurement, careful record keeping, and one institution everyone already trusted: Mesopotamia. Around 3000 BCE, in cities like Uruk and Ur, temples functioned as something close to the world's first banks. Farmers brought in barley, the staple grain of the region, and temple scribes recorded exactly how much each person had deposited on clay tablets. A unit of weight called a shekel became the standard, first measured in barley and later in silver, for transactions where hauling actual grain across the city wasn't practical. Here's the detail almost nobody expects. The silver itself was rarely what mattered. Ordinary Mesopotamians almost never touched it. What mattered was the number on the tablet. Some of these records were sealed inside a clay envelope, and the promise inscribed on it wasn't just a note, it was transferable. Whoever physically held the tablet could collect the debt, which meant these clay envelopes could change hands from person to person, exactly like paper currency does today, 2,000 years before anyone had invented a coin. Debt piled up so fast under this system that by the 18th century BCE, King Hammurabi had to write actual laws limiting how long someone could be enslaved for failing to repay one, capping it at 3 years. Money, in other words, wasn't born from trade. It was born from debt. The IOU came first. The coin came centuries later. While Mesopotamian scribes were inventing credit, on the completely opposite side of the world, a totally different solution was quietly taking shape. In China, as early as the Shang dynasty, around 1200 BCE, people started using small ocean shells called cowries as currency. Not because a king declared it, because the shells were rare, durable, easy to count, and impossible to counterfeit with anything nearby. The idea spread on its own, without any single empire pushing it, all the way from the coasts of China, across India, throughout the Pacific Islands, and eventually across the entire African continent. By the time European traders reached West Africa centuries later, cowrie shells were still functioning as a fully developed currency, one so entrenched that colonial trading companies shipped them in by the boatload specifically to pay for goods, and later, unforgivably, to pay for enslaved people. Cowrie shells ended up circulating as money for roughly 4,000 years in more places on Earth across more unconnected cultures than any coin in human history. And if you think that's strange, the Pacific island of Yap took the entire concept somewhere even stranger. The Yapese used enormous carved limestone discs called rye stones as currency, some of them 12 feet across, quarried on a neighboring island over 200 miles away, and hauled back by canoe at serious risk of life. Here's the part that should genuinely break your idea of what money even is. The stones were almost never moved once they arrived. People didn't carry them around to make purchases. Ownership simply changed hands by community agreement. Everyone on the island just remembered who owned which stone. There's a documented case of a RAI stone that sank to the bottom of the ocean during a storm on the way back from the quarry and never touched land at all. The people of Yap decided it still still counted. It was still real wealth, still owned, still worth something, purely because everyone agreed it was. Which is, when you strip away every coin and every bill in your own wallet right now, exactly how money still works today. So somewhere between Mesopotamian debt tablets and shells that traveled continents and stones lost at the bottom of the sea, a new problem emerged. None of these systems worked well between total strangers. A clay tablet only means something if you trust the person or the temple that issued it. Cowries can be faked with careful work. Stones can't travel at all. What the ancient world still didn't have was something that could carry trust inside the object itself, something a stranger could accept without needing to know or trust anyone at all. That problem got solved around 600 BCE in a small kingdom called Lydia, in what's now western Turkey. The Pactolus River, which ran straight through the Lydian capital, was full of a naturally occurring gold and silver alloy called electrum. King Alyattes took lumps of that electrum, stamped them with the image of a roaring lion, the royal symbol of Lydia, and put his own authority behind their weight and their purity. That stamp is the entire invention. Not the metal, the guarantee. For the first time in human history, a stranger on the other side of a market stall didn't need to know you or trust your god or trust your temple. They just needed to trust the lion. Lydian coins spread almost instantly through the Greek world, and within a few generations, coinage as we understand it today had essentially been invented. Here's the twist almost nobody tells you. Coins didn't replace credit. They just ran alongside it for the next 2,600 years, right up until an almost unbelievable moment in London. For over 600 years, the English royal treasury, the exchequer, kept its financial records on wooden tally sticks, notched sticks split down the middle, one half given to the person owed money, one half kept by the crown. It was, functionally, the exact same idea as that Mesopotamian clay tablet, just carved in wood instead of pressed in clay. England didn't fully retire the system until 1826. In 1834, with 2 entire cartloads of these obsolete sticks just sitting around, the government decided the easiest way to get rid of them was to burn them in the furnaces underneath the House of Lords. The fire got out of control. It burned down almost the entire Palace of Westminster, in what was at the time the worst fire London had seen since the Great Fire of 1666. Parliament itself quite literally burned down because of an ancient debt record nobody needed anymore. So here's the actual arc. Ancient humans didn't invent money to make trading easier between strangers with nothing in common. They invented it to keep track of what people already owed each other, inside communities where everyone already knew and trusted one another. Cattle turned obligation into a countable animal. Barley and silver turned it into a weighable unit inside a temple ledger. Clay tablets turned it into something transferable. Cowries turned it into something a stranger could actually verify by touch. Stones proved you didn't even need to move the object at all, just remember who owned it. And a stamped lion in Lydia finally solved the one problem all of it had been circling for 2,000 years, letting 2 strangers who trusted absolutely nothing else about each other trust one single mark instead. We didn't invent money. We invented a way to remember. The coin in your pocket right now is just the newest, shiniest way of writing down the exact same thing a Sumerian priest was writing on wet clay 5,000 years ago. I owe you. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We make videos like this one every week about the ancient systems still quietly running underneath modern life. The ones you use every single day without ever being told where they actually came from. If that's something you want more of, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm this kind of storytelling is worth keeping alive.